get some good picks. Hello, everyone. Please take your seats if you can, so we can get the program started as soon as possible. Oh, and as a reminder, please silence your cell phones if you have not already. All right, I guess we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is John Kraus. I'm the Executive VP here at Congregation Beth Shalom, as well as a board member on for the CBS Men's Club, the organization that's putting on this event here today. So I am your MC for today, so thank you all for coming, for being here. This is a great turnout, and we're very glad to see you all. The Yom Hashoah program, for those of you that have been here in the past and seen the various programs we've had, is one of the focal points of the Men's Club every year. Those of you that have been to any Men's Club event knows that we, as the Men's Club, we have a lot of fun. We do a lot of social events that are designed to bring people together, but we also think it is so important, and probably more important, to bring together the community at educational events like the one you're here for today. This is a program and an event that we're very proud of each and every year. It's different every year. And it's a program that in the past has won the Men's Club awards from the Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs. So again, it's something we're really proud of, and really are excited and glad that you are all here with us today for today's program. So the program today will be a program about anti-Semitism, going back from the 1930s, the time of the Holocaust, all the way to today. And we have two incredible speakers that I will introduce to you here today, and I'll let you know a little bit about what this program is going to be. The first of our two speakers is a Holocaust survivor, an author, an actor, and a world-traveling speaker, David Lenga. And the other speaker that we have here today, we're very lucky to have both of these speakers here today, is the Southwest Campus Regional Manager at Stand With Us, Chloe Levion. So in just a few minutes, we're going to have an interview with our two guests, led by our very own Hal Dash, who's here with us today. Following the interview, Hal will open the door for questions. I know some people perhaps are watching on YouTube. If you have questions, enter those questions into the comments, and we'll try to get to those as well. Following the Q&A, we will have a candlelighting program, as well as a short program outside with us here at the Holocaust Memorial that we have outside of our facility. So before we get to Hal, who will introduce our two guests, our two special guests, I want to call up Rabbi Siegel and Cantor Cohen.
Welcome, everyone. In just a moment, I'm going to ask, as the ark is open, that we rise. We have here, oh, thank you. Can you hear me better? Welcome, everybody. And I wanted to just say we are going to rise in a moment as our ark is opened. We are going to take out our Holocaust Torah, which is number 1212. We do not have much information about this Torah scroll. This Torah scroll is only from Czechoslovakia. That's all the information that we have. And so we need to remember one of the most important aspects of what we're doing here today is recovering memory. And so as the ark is open, I ask that you rise. The Torah is the centerpiece of the Jewish people. And each and every one of us has a Torah inside of us. And we thought it would be appropriate that our Czech's Torah would be out with us this late morning and early afternoon so that the memory of those in Czechoslovakia that used this Torah will be with us. And we also remember just yesterday a beloved member of this community, Linda Stilson, passed away. And we ask that her Torah shine forth in memory. May her memory be a blessing. And let us say amen.
Amen.
Please be seated.
So thank you, Rabbi and Cantor. And at this point, I'll turn the floor over to Hal Dash.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you, Rabbi, and thank you, Cantor. And it's great to see such a terrific crowd and a lot of people online watching here today. But what is most gratifying, seeing so many friends and members, is seeing a great number of kids who are here today. And I think it's very important. And one of the reasons we wanted to do this program today, it's entitled, It Starts With Words, and that is anti-Semitism and things that are worse than words always begin with words and comments. And both of our speakers have been exposed to hateful words, hurtful words, and also have seen some of the greatest horrors of this century, as well as what's happening today in our society, on college campuses, all the way down to middle school and elementary school. And we're here to talk about some of that stuff today, but also what these brave and heroic people are doing to combat anti-Semitism and hatred, and what we can all do. And after this program, we're going to have a short program at the memorial outside. Our artist, Granville Beals, is here, and the committee that helped raise money and for the construction of the memorial. We're going to have a short service outside, and we invite everybody to join that one. And thank you, John, for being our MC today. David Lenga was born in Lodz, Poland, a big industrial city, just around the turn of the century. His father had a very successful manufacturing business, and they lived well. He had friends, not just Jewish friends, but non-Jewish friends. And he recounted to us, and we're grateful to Granville Beals, our artist, for helping introduce David to us, and stand with us for introducing Chloe to us. But David lived a very good Jewish life in Poland, as many Jewish Poles did in the cities, not so much in the shtetls. But David remembers coming home in 1939 on September 1st from school when bombs and machine guns started going off all over Poland. It was the German invasion of Poland to start World War II. He's lucky he escaped to get home. However, in the years that followed, from the ghetto to 3 concentration camps, including Auschwitz and Dachau, he lost 100 members of his family. After the war, went to a displaced persons camp and met his future wife, who also survived the war. They went to Sweden for 10 years and then came to the United States, and had a very good life. His wife tragically passed away some years ago, but he has children and grandchildren. He speaks all over the world. In fact, he was invited by the German government in May, I think, David, to speak at Dachau. He didn't want to go, and you can understand why. They're having a commemoration ceremony, but David was persuaded by his family to go, and some of the family members will go with him. He hadn't been to Poland in 71 years until he was invited back to see Auschwitz, and you can just imagine somebody who was there, who twice looked in the eyes of Joseph Mengele, the guy who decided, the Nazi doctor who decided who was going to live and die, and he escaped Mengele's his grasp and his potential death sentence twice, escaped from Auschwitz. He'll talk a little bit about it. David spends his time lecturing, writing. He's written a book available on Amazon. He's in movies and documentaries. And can you believe 95 years old? He doesn't look a day over 70. He looks younger than I do. Also, what's important is we just finished Pesach, and this is the 83rd anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, when a handful of Jews with a few pistols and guns and a couple of machine guns held off the mighty German army for weeks until they were finally overrun. And from here, David is going to the Holocaust Museum of LA to be part of that program and sing in Yiddish the partisan song at the end of that program. And he speaks 5 languages. He's more computer savvy than most people in the room, certainly more than me. Does his own PowerPoints and writing, wrote his own book. Quite an amazing figure. And Chloe giving us a different perspective, because so much today on the internet, social media, kids in school, colleges, high school, are being exposed to hate language, bullying, anti-Semitism, and those who are not Jewish as well. And Chloe goes to college campuses, 150 campuses you have represented, doing education and outreach. And she just finished with Israel Apartheid Week, and she'll talk about that and what happened at her alma mater, UCLA. And she went to UCLA, was not immune to anti-Semitism on that campus, and we'll talk a little bit about it. And she's very active. She's a summa cum laude graduate of UCLA, was very active with Jewish groups on the UCLA campus. But even at a place as liberal as UCLA, there are lots of things going on that are very, very concerning. Words can turn into action, and again, that's why the theme of today. And so let me just start the interview by asking each of you, David, in your mind, what is to you, it starts with words? What does it mean? How do you interpret it? And what did it mean for you growing up in Poland?
The Holocaust, as we know it, the Holocaust, as we know it, did not fall down from the sky. It wasn't a spontaneous happening. This enterprise by the Nazis was meticulously planned. It was meticulously carried out. It was deliberately implemented, step by step by step. The first step to the Holocaust started with insulting, nefarious words. The Jews were labeled. The Jews were portrayed as evil. The Jews were slowly dehumanized. At a very slow pace, it started with words. Anti-Semitism was inherent in Europe, in the Christian communities, because the majority of the people of Europe were Catholic Christians, with the exception of Germany, Holland, and of course England, that were Lutheran. The point is, I as a child, growing up in Poland, didn't know about anti-Semitism right away. I didn't, I was a kid. But when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I went to start going outside and playing with my Polish mates in the sandbox, we just got along fine, as kids do. You know, we were giggling and playing together until I said something that displeased them. And at that point, they spewed forth their anti-Semitism in the form of accusing me, a 4-year-old, of being a parszywy Żydzie in Polish, which means a scabby Jew. I didn't even know what that word meant, but I felt terribly, terribly hurt. So I ran to my mom, and I started crying, and I says, "Mom, am I scabby?" And she says, no, Dovshel, you are not scabby. You're a wonderful boy. I love you. The family loves you. Don't worry. These boys are evil. They tell you bad things. Don't listen to them. Folks, at 4 years of age is the first time in my life that I encountered vicious anti-Semitism. And it started with words. And those words later on were prevalent everywhere. In high school, in the courtyard, wherever I turned. The Jewish students had to leave the classroom every time when the Catholic students were taught their religion. And in the courtyard, we were bullied constantly with words, with threats, and we did not feel safe. That was the beginning of my understanding of what anti-Semitism is.
Chloe's family, to mention, originally was from Iran, and I believe they left just before the revolution in '79. Obviously, there was historically a huge Jewish community in Iran. I don't know if things got bad or they experienced anti-Semitism, but came to the United States, did well. Chloe went to school, etc. But I'll never forget the story you told when your mother told you about wearing, a Jewish star and going to college. Why don't you recount that? What did they experience in Iran and your own experience?
Sure. To start off with their experience in Iran, similar to how I speak at student government meetings when there's a boycott or a divestment of Israel, I talk about how the Holocaust didn't start with gas chambers and concentration camps. It started with words. It started with the deliberate demonization of the Jewish people and isolation in the global economy. When my family lived in Iran and the Persian Jewish community was in Iran for 2,700 years, there were very good times, but there were also really bad times. When there was the creation of the State of Israel, there was a lot of anti-Zionism coming to light, anti-Semitism coming to light in Iran. And it started with words. My dad hid his Jewish identity. He was told that he used the blood of Muslim children, the same blood libel we saw in Europe with Christian children, to bake his matzah. I always thought that was a silly blood libel because matzah is not pink, it's not red, it's beige. How could there be blood in it? But jokes aside, there was a lot of anti-Semitism in Iran that started with words. And luckily, my parents and my family were able to leave, and the Jewish community were able to leave and come and establish homes in Los Angeles and Great Neck and Israel. But yes, it started with words. It started with calling Jews demonic, saying Zionists are satanic, and different words that we saw in Iran. And when I grew up in Los Angeles, I grew up in a Beverly Hills Persian Jewish bubble. I didn't experience any anti-Semitism. I thought that this was something that we only saw in the past. When I started college, that's when I first experienced anti-Semitism, and my mom told me, please don't wear your Magen David necklace, please don't wear your Chai necklace. She didn't know that I would walk around the quad with my Israel club with an Israel flag tied around my neck. I think that would very much scare her, but my parents have that trauma of Iran and seeing what was happening during the time of starting college in 2018. They still are very much afraid because of what they personally experienced in Iran.
Well, Chloe, let's stay on that for a second, because some people say that, well, what's happening today is not Germany in the 1930s and other countries in Europe, Italy, etc., all countries really to a certain degree. What's your take on that thought, Chloe?
It's a different society, for sure, but the same evil that we saw time and time again throughout Jewish history is still very prevalent today. During COVID, we saw a lot of anti-Semitism on social media, protests going on. I'm sure you've all seen it. There's been a lot of recent incidents in Los Angeles, namely even within the Persian Jewish community. In May of 2021, my brother's friends were at my favorite sushi restaurant, Sushi Fumi on La Cienega. a caravan of men with Palestinian flags. This was during the war in Gaza. They asked who here is Jewish. My brother's friend raised his hand, said they're Jewish, and they were attacked. And recently, just I think 2 months ago, 2 Persian Jews, both who my family knew, were shot outside of synagogues in Pico Robertson in a 2-day period. So hearing students, hearing my peers on Bruin Walk at UCLA chanting "Long live the Intifada, globalize the Intifada," seeing Jews attacked and killed at their places of worship, it's hard to think that it can't happen here.
And obviously, David, you obviously experienced the 30s in Poland and contemporary society now. What's your view? Are there a lot of parallels between then and now, or is it really we are different than what was happening in Europe in the 30s?
When I first came to the United States, in 1954, with my wife and 2 small children, we were put up we were assigned rather to live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was my choice. We were assigned initially by the Hayas organization into a Jewish quarter where we were given room to live for the time being, and we were among Jewish people, American Jewish people. But those people were old, and they were actually themselves coming from Imperial Russia, escaping the pogroms there, and settled in the United States. They knew something about the Holocaust, but they did not know an awful lot. When I tried to talk about my experiences to those very Jews, they shut me up. They didn't want to hear it. And they said to me, "It's too gruesome. Don't talk about it. Just forget it. Talk about a happy thing." And they said, "By the way, this is the United States, not Germany. It can never happen here what happened there." And at that point I said to them, "Never is a big word. Don't misuse it, because it indeed can happen under the right circumstances." What we're witnessing today is my words coming true. We have witnessed when the Capitol was invaded in January, we have witnessed parallels to the 1930s that curled my skin. As a Holocaust survivor, I saw parallels that were frightening. It reminded me of the burning of the Reichstag in Germany when Hitler came to power. I couldn't condone this. I spoke up. Folks, don't ever believe for 1 minute that we are safe. We are only safe to the extent that we are defending our freedom. Freedom, as we know it, as we cherish it, is not free. It has to be fought in every generation. It has to be fought to keep it, to hold it, to cherish it. It's not free, and it is very, very vulnerable. This is what I witnessed here.
Something I want to add, what makes today different than the 1930s is that Jews have sovereignty over our ancestral homeland of Israel. And before the revolution in Iran, when things started to get bad, my mom and her family were able to seek refuge in Israel. And that's something that Jews didn't have in the past, sovereignty over Israel.
So in terms of what you're, one of the things, you know, in the 30s and during periods of history, that when Jews were put in ghettos, when they were persecuted, you know, there were street demonstrations, people were out in the streets, etc. There was no radio, no TV. Hitler used radio brilliantly in a demonic way to rile up the German people and others in Europe. But today we have what so many of our young people are exposed to is social media and the internet. And I know, Chloe, you and your team and others that stand with us are very aggressive in monitoring and countering what's on social media. And I think every parent, every person in this room knows the good, the bad, and the ugly of social media. So from your perspective, you touched on it a little bit in your last answer. Take us a little farther on it.
Sure. As most teenagers during COVID, I got involved in TikTok, and I had my account. It's called That Persian Jew, where I educate about my experiences with anti-Semitism at UCLA, about my identity as a Persian Jew, because I learned when I leave my bubble, there's many people who haven't heard of Persian Jews and don't know about our history. And I also educate about Israel, and I don't think there's a day that goes by without a vicious and vile anti-Semitic comment or seeing an anti-Semitic video. I get comments like 6 million wasn't enough, or go back to Poland. I'm like, read my username. It's That Persian Jew. My family's never lived in Poland. Or saying that I'm not a real Iranian because I support Israel, and that I'm a baby killer because I support Israel. There's a lot of anti-Semitism on social media, and there's a lot of really great platforms that educate about Israel on social media, a lot of great student leaders and activists. So yes, there's a lot of anti-Semitism on social media, and organizations like Stand With Us are doing what we can to put pressure on these platforms to stand up and follow their guidelines and take down these comments. And it's very scary what's going on, but there's also a lot to be hopeful about with social media.
We'll get into some specifics of how you work and what you encourage parents to do, but David told me an absolutely chilling story recently. Most everybody in this room and Jews know about Elie Wiesel, so does the outside. We're Nobel laureate, who's one of the definitive writers among a handful of the Holocaust from his small town, I think, in Romania, and how he survived and his writings. But David told me a really chilling story about Elie Wiesel at an appearance. And David, would you recount that story for us?
Yes. I was invited to a lecture that Elie Wiesel was giving at UCLA, and many of my friends that were also survivors were very eager to listen to him. He himself was a Holocaust survivor of Auschwitz, and so he spoke from his own experiences, obviously. And when he came on the podium, a big segment of the audience, the students, were booing him down from the podium. They did not let them speak. I was horrified. I says, how can that happen? This is UCLA. It's supposed to be a bastion of free speech. What's going on? Folks, he was never able to speak. He was humiliated, and he had to step down, and he never got to speak. They booed him out from the room. And I witnessed this. And I could never forget that this happened in the United States, in UCLA, in those days.
Well, again, it's another example of it starts with words, and words can really evolve into actions. And we don't want to, for any Bruins out there, we don't want to pick on UCLA, because for those of you at home and in the audience who saw the presentation expertly put together by Dave Simon and managed by Jeff Janofsky and Bruce Neft, campuses all over the country are experiencing this, from the Ivy League to the Pac-12 to my own university, whether it's graffiti, whether it's BDS forums, boycott, divestment, and sanctions that you've heard about. It's rampant everywhere. And I know this is something that Chloe deals with all the time. And so, Chloe, you are involved with the Western United States and a number of college campuses and others. And other of your peers, by the way, deal with high schools and even down to middle school. Why don't you recount what your experience has been in a wide swath of these colleges, what you are doing and what's happening also that you know about in K to 12.
Sure. I'll start down with middle school. My fellow at UCLA, her little cousin at Portola Middle School, so not too far from here. There were students that come up to her every day saying Holocaust jokes, saying you probably got a disease during the Holocaust, equating her to Nazis because she's a Zionist, and that's happening in middle schools. I work closely with my coworker who works with the high school students, and I'm horrified by the experiences I've been seeing. In San Diego, her fellow is the only Jewish student at her school, and there's a kid in the class that gives her the Nazi salute every day. He said that it was a genetic class, and they were learning about different genetic diseases. Your genetic disease is that you're Jewish. Just horrific anti-Semitism. And what we do is she works with the DEI officer, the diversity, equity, and inclusion officer at the school, with the principal. That student has had many talkings to. He was suspended temporarily, and he gave a formal apology. And something that she did is that she came to the campus, to the high school, to give a presentation about anti-Semitism. And that student told her fellow, we're all going to wear Kanye West shirts for the day she comes to speak. So my coworker, she came, she spoke. Thankfully, they weren't wearing the Kanye West shirts. And since that apology the student gave, she hasn't been dealing with that anti-Semitism on that campus, thankfully. On college campuses, I don't know where to begin. I'll start with last week at UCLA. I came as a professional to help Bruins for Israel. I was the president last year, so I'm very fond of this group. And it was Israel Apartheid Week, and every year we do some version of Choose Love Week or Peace is Possible Week. So we brought the Stand With Us Experiential Israel program. We had a big wall called the Gratitude Wall, where we asked students to write what they're grateful for, and we taught them about how in Israel, during the time between Yom Hashoah and Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israelis come to the street and remember what they're grateful for during this time. So while there were 10 feet or maybe even bigger, 8 different ones, full of misinformation about Israel, full of lies, and students chanting, "Long live the Intifada." Keep in mind this was also during Passover. And then while we were at our gratitude wall, we had students come up to us and say, "You're all not real Jews. The black people are the real Jews. That this is all perverted," when we had nothing about being Jewish. Yes, we had Israel flags. So experiencing different sides of anti-Semitism all in the same day. Just to go on with UCLA, yes, we've experienced BDS on multiple occasions, multiple times when I was a student. We also had the flip side of there was a free speech wall on campus. It was an anti-abortion wall, and people wrote, 6 million wasn't enough. I support a woman's right to abort a 5-year-old Jewish kid. And there were swastikas all over it. Thankfully, by the time we got there to take photos, people crossed off the swastikas, but you could see that it was there. At the University of Denver, our former high school intern, now one of my college students, he has the only dorm with a mezuzah in the freshman dorm, and a student put pork and rubbed it on the wall of the dorm. And 2 sophomores that same weekend had their mezuzahs taken off the wall and thrown down the staircase. We're working with the administration, with the Title IX office on getting consequences for those perpetrators of these incidents, and also working on bringing in education. When there was a swastika at UC Davis and the student government president put out a statement condemning it, she included Holocaust distortion. So because of the rise of Holocaust distortion and Holocaust denial, and because our organization was started by the daughter of Holocaust survivors, we created a Holocaust Education Center. So whenever there's a different incident on campus or high school or middle school, we have a middle school department, we're able to provide support for the students. And that's what I experienced as a college student. I was involved in a lot of different organizations, but Stand With Us was the one that was there for me and ensured that I never felt alone when dealing with anti-Semitism.
Yeah, obviously, the thing is to respond quickly with education,
Yes.
getting to the
Education is the road to peace is our motto.
Very good. And David, you recently wrote an op-ed piece in the Los Angeles Times. From your prism, from your perspective, what do we all need to do to, combat all of this? I mean, we hear the lines over and over again. There is some good news in that the Office of Civil Rights in Washington has pursued several universities. George Washington, they came to a settlement with the University of Vermont. And, part of the problem is people don't want to admit, especially on campuses and other workplaces, that, anti-Semitism doesn't exist. David, what was your message when you wrote the piece in the Times?
When I wrote my op-ed in the Times, I had to express my uncertainty and my unease about the situation of anti-Semitism facing us today, let alone what we went through. And I did it by saying that anti-Semitism is so inherent in society, especially in the younger generation that know nothing about the Holocaust. There's a tremendous level of ignorance, that speaking out, trying to make young people especially understand the severity of the Holocaust and the consequences of being apathetic, that's not an option. Because apathy breeds evil, I told them. Apathy invites a Holocaust. The Holocaust happened because of apathy, the world's apathy. No one raised their finger when they saw the Holocaust happening in Germany first, when they were burning down the synagogues and vandalizing Jewish businesses in 1938, 1 year before World War II broke out. Hitler tested the world to see what the reaction is going to be, if there's going to be any kind of a protest. None happened. Not the Vatican, not any head of government, not any student organization rose up in protest. And that is worldwide. And when the Jews tried to take the St. Louis to escape Hitler's clutches in 1938, to come to America to seek freedom from Hitler, they were turned back because they closed their borders and wouldn't let them in. Not Cuba, not Canada, not the United States. They had to turn back, and 98% of all these people, Jewish people, tried to escape Nazism. 98% were annihilated in the Holocaust. That is apathy. That is indifference. That is turning the other way. The Vatican, the epitome supposedly of moral authority, did not lift a finger, did not speak out. On the contrary, the Pope made a concordat with Hitler that he is accepting his regime, and so he could have an ambassador to the Vatican. This was in the face of all this evil going on. And when Hitler realized that the world is indifferent and they don't care what happens to the Jews, then he went ahead with the Holocaust and implemented it. And that is the emphasis that I put. You cannot be indifferent to evil when you see it happening. You have to speak up and stand up and defend it with every means possible. Because people have a tremendous level of ignorance in the society on every level, but especially in the younger generation. They don't know the most elementary things about what happened, about the recent history. The Holocaust is the recent history, folks. Because history is measured in thousands and years, millennia, and centuries. This has happened 80 years ago. And yet, this is what we are facing. And in my op-ed article, I made great emphasis. I put great emphasis on the fact that the people have to wake up from their slumber and not allow themselves to be indifferent to political developments that are threatening our lives, our safety, and our freedom.
On a practical level, because we talked at the beginning of the program about, what folks can do, et cetera, and, with especially now, as we've said several times, all the social media, and people can be anonymous, they can be, unknown. Look what happened in this recent leak of intelligence information from the Pentagon. Some 21-year-old kid and his group of, obviously right-wing, gun-loving folks could get a hold of this and disseminate it. Is there really good advice for parents and kids out there, not just to get educated, but defend against anti-Semitism and the words that hurt and ultimately lead to violence?
I know you just said other than education, but it really, really starts with education, education, education. When I experienced my first incident where someone was asking me, why did you post about Israel? Why are you supporting Israel during Operation Protective Edge, freshman orientation of high school? I froze because I did not know what to say. I did not know the history. I knew I loved Israel, but I didn't know why I loved Israel. I didn't know how to defend myself. I didn't know how to have this conversation. And it feels like a lot of us, when we get to college campuses, and now, unfortunately, at high schools, it's like we're put on a battlefield without any armor, and that armor is education, knowing the history, and being proud and confident enough to share that with others. And it's also knowing who your audience is. We like to talk about the 10-80-10 rule on college campuses, but I really think that rule is universal. There's the 10 people who love Israel, they support Israel, they're Jewish, they went on birthright. There's the 10 people who hate Israel. There's nothing you can say that can change their mind. And then there's the 80% that's indifferent. They don't know about Israel, they haven't formed their opinion. That's the group that you should focus your time on. That's the group on social media. If you see them posting ignorance, that's the opportunity to educate. That's the group you can educate. When it comes to that 10%, the people on the quad at UCLA chanting "Long live the Intifada," a conversation with them will likely lead to just being upset and moving nowhere. I know a few people who had those conversations and they couldn't even get them to condemn Hamas. So education is really that step. Educating your children, teaching them to stand tall and be leaders, and knowing that they're not alone. We at Stand With Us are here to support people in every area, every period of life, and also Hillels and Chabads and different campus groups are there for students. When I started experiencing anti-Semitism on campus, I thought to myself, should I get involved? Is this worth my time? But I learned that we really don't have the privilege of standing idly by, and that with each anti-Semitic incident I experienced, I got even more motivated to educate others, to stand tall and be a leader. But I've seen a lot of my peers just stray away, not getting engaged. If they have a professor say something anti-Semitic in class, being upset but not saying anything about it, not even after getting your A. It's teaching your kids, yourselves also leading by example of standing up, being proud, and educating yourselves, getting education from other organizations, and being proud to be Jewish. The biggest way to combat anti-Semitism, other than education, is wearing your Magen David necklace with pride. Telling people you're Jewish, because a lot of people never met a Jew before. So education, and also being proud to be Jewish, because it's such an amazing thing to be Jewish today, and also being Jewish on college campus. Although there's a lot of anti-Semitism, it's a very great community, and it's a very impactful experience being involved with that.
And there are a lot of resources. StandWithUs.com has an awful lot of resources. Their director, Roz Rothstein, is really a beacon of light. And, there is pushback happening. It needs to happen more. The other side oftentimes outshouts us and outshouts those who disagree with them. But I mentioned before David, who is an author and a writer and who's as internet savvy as anybody I know. and who has a very, if you Google David Lenga and see all his speeches and the theme of today's event is from one of the speeches David gave. You'll see lots of resources, but David is somebody who spends a lot of time on the internet and speaking to a lot of groups, a lot of non-Jewish groups. What's the message that you deliver? You've already mentioned it, but recently you talked to a bunch of law enforcement officials,
yes,
not Jewish, and what did you tell them?
I did speak to law enforcement. There is a program that the law enforcement has for having Holocaust education given to the classes. And so they come to the Museum of the Tolerance, and I'm a speaker there, so I'm invited to speak to these groups. They're all adult people, obviously, men and women, and they're very curious and very polite and listen what I have to say. And I found out in the question and answer period that very many of those future law enforcement officers, because some of them in academies and so forth, that they really have a very low level of understanding of what happened in the Holocaust. Even they do. So I'm speaking to them and explaining to them what the Holocaust is, what it led to it, how it can happen again to any group that is targeted. In our case of the Holocaust, it was the Jews and the Gypsies and the disabled and the infirm and those that disagreed with Hitler and political prisoners. They were target groups that were thrown in concentration camps and experienced the brunt of the Holocaust. But other groups in other places under other circumstances can equally be targeted. Why? Because minorities inherently are powerless. They don't have a country of their own. They don't have a structure, or group or organization is powerful enough to withstand onslaught, personal insults, and so forth and so on. And they've been targeted for their weaknesses, and they were the brunt of the hate. And this is what I'm telling them, basically based on my own experiences. This is what I speak to the people that count, because they will be future police persons, Secret Service, and so forth. But I have a story that I briefly wanted to tell, which is indicating not only the level of ignorance, but the way young people are being influenced by their peers, by their elders. These are vulnerable souls, the young children. They are very impressionable. Then they hear something from the elders, they absorb it, and they sometimes act on it. So this is what happened to me. The Holocaust Museum of the Museum of Tolerance calls me up, the director calls me up, and he says, David, would you like to speak to a school in Massachusetts? Okay, yes, what's it about? Well, the teacher turned to us. She was a Jewish teacher in Massachusetts, in that little island of St. George, with one school there on that island. That teacher was one of 3 Jewish teachers in the entire school. One day, 3 boys come in the class. They had a Hitler mustache, and all 3 confronted her. They found out she was Jewish. All the boys confronted that female teacher and said, "Heil Hitler." And they had Hitler mustache on. That teacher was totally stunned and flabbergasted that they targeted her. And then she didn't know what to do. So she turned to the museum. And the museum turned to me and said, David, I want you to talk to that class. I arranged a Zoom. The teacher was there, other teachers were, the principal was there, and the student body was there, the whole class, including those 3 boys. I was speaking to them, and it was powerful. And I said, please record my speech. Watch it in your privacy of your own home. I said that the parents of these boys, should watch it with their children in their own home again and see what I'm saying and listen what I'm saying. And then I want to have another conference with just 3 boys with their parents on Zoom, and I want to talk to them again. And so it happened. A few weeks later, that was arranged, and I spoke to them. And I said to them, having seen what you did, having heard what you did, how do you feel about Hitler? Do you still think he's a good person? And the boys were just putting down their heads in shame and humiliation, and they were mumbling, no, no. I says, that's not enough for you to say no, no, that you are convinced. You need to talk to your peers. No, no, that Hitler was not a good person, that he was an evil incarnate, that he was the devil on earth. He was the epitome of evil. Look what he did. He was responsible for the killing of a third of a nation. And that made such a difference, because a day after, the teacher emailed me. She says, Mr. Lenga, I cannot tell you the impact you had on that entire class, because these 3 boys came to me begging my forgiveness and telling them how sorry they are that they did what they did. So an impact is made consciously when you target a particular situation and you see how vulnerable those young people are to anti-Semitism.
Just before we get to some audience questions, recently the state of California passed an ethnic studies curriculum program, very controversial, not just for Jews, but a lot of other ethnic groups, Asian Pacific Islanders, and the board was very progressive, and several Jewish legislators demanded that changes be made. Chloe, is it realistic to and the course, the course is optional. Teachers can teach it or not just the Holocaust and Jewish part, but a history of Asians in California, et cetera, et cetera. Is this a tool that parents should lobby their schools for, to have this kind of program institutionalized? Because there's not a lot of history being taught in schools anymore, which is sad. Is that an avenue potentially?
Well, I think that ethnic studies put in correctly into practice can be such a great thing, learning about diverse communities. We started an ethnic studies department at Stand With Us to combat this very issue, and creating really great curriculum about the Jewish community, about Mizrahi Jews, Jews from the Middle East and North Africa, about the Holocaust, because that was not in the first version. The first version glorified anti-Semitic leaders like Ilhan Omar, Linda Sarsour. The first draft was terrible, and a lot of organizations and a lot of student leaders came and spoke out against it. The new curriculum that was adopted, Jews were upset by it, Palestinians were upset by it. Nobody was happy, but it's a lot better than the first draft. But right now the fight is ensuring that there's no bias when teaching about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, actually educating about Jewish history. So if you are interested in doing that, please contact me, find me, and we'll talk about how we can actually bring in good Jewish education into it, while also learning about other minority communities.
Very good. So we want to save some time for questions, short questions, short answers, so we can get a number in. For our audience here at Beth Shalom in the sanctuary, anybody like to ask a question of our panelists? And you want to speak loud and...
Yeah, because I've got such a quiet voice. David, when I was my son's age, he's 10, a Holocaust survivor came to my temple and spoke, and it changed my life. So thank you for what you're doing. Please know it matters, and it does make changes. Robert Kraft started a program now, and he's starting to show commercials. In the 1930s, as you said, nobody spoke for us. The fact that Robert Kraft is doing what he's doing, and the fact that we're doing this, do you think that's going to make a difference?
So, repeating the question, Robert Kraft, I assume the guy who owns the Patriots, go Patriots, very strong supporter of Israel, is starting this organization, and to combat a lot of this. And so, what's your reaction?
Well, I feel that when known personalities rise up in defense of the Jewish cause, that they rise up telling the world that anti-Semitism is unacceptable, that it is an evil, that it is something that should not be propagated, that it led to the Holocaust. People listen. These people have tremendous followings. They have a tremendous megaphone that those followers of those sports people or personalities, they have tremendous following. And that makes a big difference when they speak up and they make it known to their followers and everyone that would listen what their stand is. You know, the same thing as the opposite is true. You know, when those other ones spoke anti-Semitic diatribes.
Well, everybody recall Kanye West has millions and millions of followers, and if you don't
Right.
think his followers, believe him, that's very troubling. And Kyrie Irving, other sports stars, other celebrities, but it's nice to see that celebrities are pushing back. If you've seen some of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's interviews and posts, he's become a tremendous defender of the Jewish community and civil rights. So there is that effort happening, except a lot of these celebrities on the other side have incredibly large. I wish we could get Beyonce or Taylor Swift to do something. That would be a good question. Another question from anybody. Yes, in the back, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm concerned about the dilution of the word Nazi. In the last several years, the term Nazi has been thrown around so much in social media. If you support this cause or that cause, you're a Nazi. If you oppose income taxes, and God forbid if you supported the last president, he was a Nazi, and by extension, I was a Nazi. And I know I'm not a Nazi, and I know my 80-year-old mother, Israeli mother, who taught Jewish education for 40 years in Los Angeles, she's not a Nazi. And so if one digs a little deeper, where is this term coming from? Why is he being labeled an anti-Semite? And you look at the history, and there are some unusual things that pop up. People may not know there was a Hasidic boy in Los Angeles who needed a rare surgery in New York, and no airline would accommodate his sophisticated apparatus. Trump donated his private plane so the boy could go. We know that he sued the city of Palm Beach, Florida, to allow blacks and Jews to join their prestigious country club there. And of course, we all know that he was the president, after many years of broken promises, who actually moved the embassy to Jerusalem. If this is an anti-Semite, if this is a Nazi, then Nazis are not so bad. I want to get your feedback on that. I've spoke, and I hope you forgive me if I misspoke on your behalf. When I engage some of these people on social media, I say, would a real Holocaust survivor honor your use of the word Nazi here? Because I don't think they would. Anyways, if I did misspeak on your behalf, please forgive me.
So again, the use of words that we come back to.
Okay, words are powerful, okay? And they can be twisted to suit somebody's ends. The word Nazi is an acronym. It stands for National Socialist Party of Germany. The Nationalsozialistische Arbeiterpartei. The acronym is Nazi. Nazi represents evil. Nazi represents the Holocaust. Nazi cannot be equivocated with any other term. And yet, people that are displeased with somebody's views are very quick to label them a Nazi without thinking about what he's doing. You cannot equivocate this word Nazi with any other understanding of other than evil. So when people call each other Nazi just randomly, they're totally ignorant. They don't know what they're talking about. As I said, words are powerful, and Nazi represents evil. And when I speak about Nazi, I speak about evil that happened to me, that was inflicted upon me and my family, and all the people that I knew, by Nazis. People tend to be angry at each other, and they spew out, "You're a Nazi." Just like they equivocate the Holocaust with the COVID, for instance, injections. What? people equivocate things. That is just totally, absolutely abnormal and should never happen in society, but it speaks to the level of ignorance in the people.
Chloe, you see it on your level as well, using that term.
Yes. There's a lot of equating Israelis to Nazis, that demonization of the Jewish people in Israel. I heard this once when you compare, people want to compare, Nazis is seen as the greatest evil in society, and people want to compare people they don't like to Nazis, and it really just, you lose an argument once you equate anyone to Nazis, and it's, again, education, education, education. That's what needs
You
to
have
happen.
to enlighten people, yeah.
Exactly. Well, we have some more questions. Roger in the back.
I'm just wondering, we never heard a story of how he escaped.
Yeah, we was going to save that. So, by the way, when we finish our interview shortly, we're going to have our candle lighting and a few remarks from Rabbi and Cantor, and John will be back at the podium, and then we'll have a little ceremony outside at the conclusion of this one. But when we had lunch, you talked about confronting or Mengele twice, the infamous
Yes.
Joseph in Auschwitz,
Yes.
and how you escaped from Auschwitz. It's a compelling story. Can you summarize kind of what happened? And I think he spent a half an hour telling us, and it was mesmerizing. But how'd that all happen?
Well, I was all of 16 years old. I found myself in Auschwitz, taken from the ghetto in Lodz. And the Auschwitz concentration camp I found to be not only fearsome, but my life all of a sudden was hanging on a hair, literally. When we were thrown into the barracks, like cubicles, 3 people in a little cubicle. We couldn't sleep nights because the sirens outside of the camp were blaring day and night, 24/7. And I said to the people next to me that were there before me, what is all this about? He says, they're making constant raid on the camp. They are sifting through the able-bodied from those that are not able-bodied, that they don't consider able-bodied, and they separate them. And those that they consider not able-bodied, they are being gassed and burned. And those that are considered able-bodied, they are good for labor, so they let them stay in the camp and work in gigs. I says, how does this happen? Do they have a list? Do they have a plan? Do they have names? No, it's all random. When I realized it's all random, I figured, my God, I'm next. Who knows? I couldn't take it. I said, I got to get out of this place. This is a God-forsaken hell. So I milled around in the beginning on the courtyard there when I came, and I saw a long line of people standing, and I said to the guy that the last in line, I says, excuse me, are you here for food? He says, no, we are here to apply to go to Germany proper to work as laborers in the building industry. And I says, well, what kind of workers are they looking for? And he says, anyone in the building industry, a bricklayer, a welder, an engineer, a surveyor, anyone in the building industry. I was not in that group. I was a tailor. That's all. They didn't need me. But I was so hell-bent on getting out of Auschwitz, I stood in the line anyway. I was clean-shaven like everybody else. I had striped clothing like everybody else. Everybody else looked like everybody else, like robots. And I figured, okay, I'll take my chances. So I go to, and in front of me stood a SS man. I didn't know it was Dr. Mengele at that time. I found that out later. He was the one that stood in line and made the selection with his thumb. You go to the right or you go to the left. If you go to the left, you go to death. If you go to the right, you go to be selected to work in Germany. So when my turn came, I could see that all these people ahead of me were much older than me. I was a 16-year-old kid. They were older people. And they said, and they announced to him what they can do. So, ich bin ein Tischler. I'm a carpenter. I'm a welder. I'm a whatever it is that he was in the building trade. So they said, you go to the right. The other ones go to the left. When I came, he looked at me and he laughed at my face. And he says, what the hell are you doing here? You're still a kid. You still got your mother's milk on your lips. What are you doing here? Get out of here. And he throws me out of line. And I say, oh my God, now my chance is gone. I cannot be taken away from Auschwitz to go to Germany. And I wanted so badly. So I didn't take this for an answer. I said to myself, everybody looks like everybody else. If my brother was next to me, I wouldn't recognize him. That's how everybody looks like a robot. He's probably not going to recognize me if I stand in line again and take my chances. And I did. And when the second time came, and he's just had one look at me. He says, I saw you here before. Get the hell out. If I see you one more time, I just kill you. Well, at that point, I couldn't take another chance. And yet, I was dying to get out of there. And so the next day, in the courtyard, I see two burly guys with a big, heavy pole on one end of the shoulder and the other one in front of the other end of the shoulder. In the middle was suspended a huge, huge bucket of soup. And I go up to the one in the back, and I says, excuse me, who are you? What are you doing? What's going on here? And he says, we're taking in the soup from the kitchen to the holding area that those people, 200 men, were selected to go to Germany to work in the building industry. They're all fenced around. You cannot get in or out. But we have permission to come in because we come in with the soup. And when I heard that, it's like a light bulb lit up in my brain. And I was only 16. That's how savvy I was, how street smart. I said, I put my shoulder under the pole, and I said, the three of us taking in the soup to that holding area. No, you can't do this. The guy said, they only know we are two. I said, listen, you have to be quiet, shut up, just let me walk. Otherwise, we're all in trouble. He gritted his teeth, he let me go, and we put down the soup in the holding area. The minute that happened, I disappeared among the 200 men. I just disappeared in the crowd. Didn't want to be seen or heard. 3 hours later, the trains came, the cattle cars, and everybody was loaded up. And I was the very first one on that plane. Very far, I didn't want to take any chances. When the Germans stopped counting the people, they knew it was 200. They were very meticulous. 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, who, as they were entering the train. And then when the 200th person was counted, the door shut, closed. And I was among the people that were selected. I was illicitly there. I wasn't selected, but I was there to go to Germany. So suddenly I hear, right away, as soon as the door closed, I hear a man protesting loud. I could hear his scream. But I was selected. I was selected. He was the one, the 200th person that I took his place. Folks, I was at a point at that time, I had no compassion for this man. I had no compunction of what I did. I had no particular feeling of pity of any kind, because I, at that point, was just as dehumanized as all the rest. The feelings, the human feelings that we used to possess were drowned out, were drained out from us. I didn't have it. And so I went to Germany with this train, but I didn't wind up in Germany. They told us we're going to Germany. I wound up in Auschwitz. But what I'm trying to tell you, this is the train that went to Germany, actually, to Bavaria, to Dachau. Yeah. So, sorry. So, anyway, this is how I escaped Auschwitz. And surreptitiously, cunningly, using my street smarts and acting on the impulse, and taking a chance with my life. I could have been killed if I would discover. But I met Dr. Mengele twice, facing him. That epitome of evil. He was called, rightly, the angel of death. He was experimenting on humans like otherwise others are experimenting in the laboratory on mice. That was an experience I'll never forget.
We want to move our program along, but I do want to ask both Chloe, starting with you, and David, for our audience, one final summary statement, and they'll be around afterwards, after we have our outside ceremony, because I know there were more hands up there, but give us your parting thoughts for today.
I don't know how I could speak after that. Wow. My parting thoughts to all of you is that there's so much to be proud of to be Jewish. The biggest way to combat anti-Semitism, in my opinion, is to be a proud Jew, to practice Judaism in however way that you do, to learn more about the Jewish community, Jewish diversity, about Israel, to educate others, and to stand tall, to not stand idly by, to empower your children, empower your grandchildren, empower your peers, to be proud of their identity and to speak out, because anti-Semitism is not okay. There are a lot of people out there, like the Hadids, like Kanye, and all these people on social media who hate us and who want to put us down for just being ourselves. And when there are people like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or different celebrities or different allies standing up, thank them. Thank them for going against the grain. Thank them for standing up. Just thank them for doing that and be proud of who you are.
David?
My take is this. I was born into a very religious Jewish family. I was imbued with tremendous, beautiful Jewish values. I took it with me for the rest of my life, and it helped me survive, and it helped me thrive. Judaism, to me, is so dear to my heart that I would love to see future generations embrace it and be proud Jewish people, not to be cowed by outside forces, by anti-Semitism, by bullying in schools. Withstand that force and have a force of your own to counter it. Be proud Jewish people. Carry on the tradition. The biggest disservice you can do to your enemies is to stand as a proud Jew and not be too cowed by everything that's tried to denigrate you. I am imbuing it in my family, in my children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I am speaking out loudly that I am a proud Jewish person and value and cherish my Jewish values. And I think every Jewish person should be convinced of that value. You will encounter forces in society that will try to put you down. But you are still lucky to live in the United States, even under those circumstances, where you have the ability and the right and the duty, for that matter, to stand up and speak out and not be cowed and not be intimidated, because the Jewish people have survived so many tyrannies, so many onslaughts, so many plans to annihilate them throughout the ages, but they stand as a proud people today. Look at Israel. Newborn, out of the ashes, rose up and created a beautiful garden out of a desert, a literal desert. It is something to take pride in. It is something to call your own. And this is what my message is. All this intimidation that you've experienced, all the bullying around you, it should fall off like a drop of water from a goose feather. It should not touch you, because you have a value that no one else can challenge.
On that note, thank you both very much for a very inspiring program. Thank you again, and let me turn it back to John Krause.
Thank you, Hal, and thank you so much again to our speakers here today. Thank you so much for being here, for making time out of your day. I know that it was moving and informative for everyone here, so thank you. The next person I want to introduce in our program is Men's Club President Todd Stelnick.
Thank you guys all for coming out, and thank you to the both of you guys, David and Chloe, for a wonderful day. This is a special event, Yom Hashoah, and to come out and have 100 people here, listen to you guys talk and your experiences and the education that you guys are bringing is huge. So Men's Club has, as you guys know, a fund. It's a Yom Hashoah trust fund, and it's for the education of anti-Semitism, Yom Hashoah, the Holocaust, and so forth. So we want to present you guys a donation to each of your guys' programs that you guys work with. So David, we're going to present a donation to Magen David Adam for $500. And we're also going to present another $500 to another program of yours, Anti-Defamation League. We really appreciate you telling us your stories, and how you escaped was amazing. So thank you so much. And Chloe, here is a $1,000 check to you, and for continuing to bring your education to us, everybody, to more Jews out there. And again, if anybody wants to contact Chloe to get more educated, more than welcome to do that. Get on her TikTok, right? In social media calendar. I know I'm going to try to find you. Instagram and Twitter as well too. So that will be very neat for everybody to kind of follow you, get some more followers here as well too. So again, thank you guys for everybody for coming out, and we're going to continue with the program. You guys will all receive emails in your inboxes. It's basically a letter for a donation letter if you guys want to donate to the Yom Hashoah Fund with the Men's Club. Anything helps. If you guys do have donations here, you can please give them to John Cross, Andrew Vies, Hal Dash. They'll be around after the event, or you can just mail them in as well too. Okay, guys? And again, thank you, David, and thank you, Chloe.
You're welcome. Thank you, Todd. At this point, I'd like to call up Rabbi Siegel for a few remarks.
The Shema. Who will join me? Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. The Jewish people know and hope that is the very first sentence that you say, the very last sentence that you say in your life. And we are taught the centrality of that, the importance of the Shema. And you know it. When we speak of education, it isn't an intellectual exercise where you go to a museum exhibit and read a bunch of paragraphs and then leave several hours later and go to lunch. Education in our tradition is that it becomes a part of who you are. In the bracha that we say before the Shema, it says simply, V'ten b'libenu lahavin ulhaskil lishmoa lilmod ulilmed lishmor v'lasot. Ul kayem et kol divrei Talmud Toratecha bi'ahava. It says that may we open our hearts, not your mind, not some intellectual exercises. Open your hearts. I think you have been able to do that today Open your hearts so that you can understand, discern, hear, study, observe, perform, and fulfill what it is that is most central to our people. That is a Jewish education, and we do it with love. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, when we talk about an education, we are talking about something that you inherently know, that you are taught from day one, and you will utter from your lips on the last day of your life. And so when we are about to light some candles here, it is not just an intellectual exercise where 6 candles represent the 6 million who died. It is that each and every one of us stand and allow the candle to burn a fire inside of us, to inspire us to become people who are teachers, educators, willing to learn, willing to understand. That's the kind of education we need from you. And I'm not speaking to you as a group, I'm speaking to you as an individual. And in a moment, we will be saying the Kaddish. It's not just some intellectual exercise that we say a Kaddish for somebody who passed some 80 years ago at the hands of the Nazis, but that we say the Kaddish here to inspire us to lift up each other so that we are not people who feel as though we are weak and fallen. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. May that inspire you to educate your soul, that it should bring a fire up inside of you, and that it should inspire others to do the same.
Thank you, Rabbi. At this time, as Rabbi said, we're going to do a candle lighting ceremony for the 6 candles we have here on the table that do represent the 6 million. If anyone here is a men's club member, could you join us up on the bima, as well as any children who would like to come up as well? And I should note as well that these candles were mailed out to everyone in the congregation. If you didn't get one for whatever reason, we have a box over in that white table over there with a few extras. Feel free to grab one. Please gather your family tomorrow night to light these candles. You can do the prayer that we're going to do here today. We're going to email it again to everyone in case you don't already have it. And please remember.
Please rise.
Okay, this is the blessing of the yellow candle. We light this yellow candle to rekindle God's flame, to shine his light upon the world once again, to sanctify the memories of the millions of souls, to honor their prayers and all their lost souls. We bless their existence by being alive, to light this yellow candle as proof we survived.
El Malay Rachamim, God full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of Shekhinah, your divine presence. El Malay Rachamim, a prayer that originated in the Jewish communities of Western and Eastern Europe, where it was recited for the martyrs of the Crusades and the Ukrainian Polish pogroms of the mid-1600s, is a plea that the soul be granted mechuna nechona, proper rest in Gan Eden. Through our prayers and good deeds, we hope to earn God's compassion for the departed souls of those who are dear to us. El Malay Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfecha Shechina, Im Kedoshim utorim kezochar harakia mazhirim et nishmat shel chalach leolamim Bal harachamim yastirem beseter kanafav leolamim Vitzror bitzror achayim et nishmatam Adonai hu nachalata ve'anuchu B'shalom amishkavam v'nomar Amen.
Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah Be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei B'chaye echon uvyom echon u'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael Bagala u'bizman kariv v'imru Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbam v'orach le'olam u'me'omaya Yitvarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal Shmei dekushar brichu Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata Tush bechata v'nechemata Da'amiran be'alma v'imru Amen Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen Oseh shalom bin romav Hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen May God, who makes harmony and peace in the heights, grant harmony and peace to us, to all Israel and all humankind, and let us all say, Amen. Please be seated.
Yes, you can all be seated. Just a couple quick thank yous before we move the program just very briefly outside to our memorial as we conclude. I want to thank, first of all, Rabbi Siegel, Cantor Cohen, for leading our service here and doing everything they did here today. Also to Rob Cohen, to Josh Kaplan and Hal Dash, our two event co-chairs. Josh, unfortunately, couldn't be here, but we thank them very much for putting in the work to make this event the success that it obviously is. Todd Stelnick, Robin Seppi, Dave Simon, Bruce Neft, Jeff Danofsky, Granville Beals, Andrew Weiss, Susanna Warlick, and of course, special thanks to our two speakers here today, who again, we're so grateful that they were here. They made time out of their busy schedules to be here. David Lenga and Chloe Levian. So if everyone could follow us very quickly outside.
We'll have a very short
service.
ceremony in front of our monument. So join us outside.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
you.